welcome people joining.
Okay.
Welcome joiners.
Hello.
We'll give it another minute and I'll get started in earnest. Right. Let me share my screen and so everyone sees the agenda, the standard agenda plus the scheduled topics. Unfortunately, my second screen is not available today, so I'm gonna have to swap windows around. All right, so we have the scheduled topics, Michelle, followed by Cosmin and Chetan. And then we have some interesting topics I saw in the dev list we might want to take a note of. And then the other thing, I think Dave Grove proposed a couple weeks ago about pushing for a unified release and see what his thoughts are on that. So with those as our topics, I'm going to stop sharing and ask if, I don't see any new people on, but if there are, please let me know. It's like all the veterans are on. And so I'll turn any other topics people want to submit now before we go on. Not, then I'll turn the floor over to you, Michelle, and you can share your screen if you like. Michelle?
Can I start?
You're up.
Okay, fine. Let me start. Let me share the screen. You need to stop share. Okay, that's fine. Sharing. Okay. Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So I'm talking the, let's say, experiment I did about WebSockets for ActionLoop. So why I did this? In my case, I did this because I need to add a Kafka long-running connection in order to solve a problem to avoid flooding Kafka with multiple action writing to it. But in general, the idea of using WebSocket has been a recurring topic in the discussions because has been discussed about adding streaming support. It can be useful for low latency, long-running connection when you connect to a server and you keep doing it for a long time. So there are a number of use cases where WebSocket could be useful. And the problem is that in the current state of, actually at the moment, OpenWhisk, the model request response that auto-scalable does not support long-running connection, long-running actions. So an actions will receive a request, must answer as soon as possible, and then leave to make space for another request. But my observation is that an action runtime is Autolnit server that is answering all the time to /run and /in requests. So the idea was, why I cannot use a runtime as a WebSocket server? Because I was needing to do that, and instead of building a new one, I decided to try to reuse the logic that we already have about with the runtime. So I did a very simple thing. I took ActionLoop. ActionLoop, you know, is the proxy that I wrote in Go, and at the moment it's powering Go, but also PHP 7.3, Swift 4.2, Python 3.7, and I'm also working on an implementation for Java. So at the moment is actually used in many different runtimes. And I did a very simple thing. I extended the proxy to also support WebSockets. So the idea is that if you pass the OW WebSocket environment variables, then the proxy will enable a new listener, and this listener will accept WebSocket connections. So you can connect and talk with the underlying action exactly in the same mode, in the same way you talk with the /run, only in continuous way. So you can see here an example. I don't know if you can, it's readable, but anyway, if you start with Docker, run, and you add the environment variables OW WebSocket, then the runtime is now able to accept a WebSocket connection. So you can see below in the screen that I am initializing it with an invoke. That is, the action is the totally normal standard action that I use for Go. So any standard action for OpenWhisk works, and works also with PHP, Python, whatever you have. And then you can connect using this WS, that is a WebSocket command line client, and then I can start to interact not just once, but more, with a single invoke, but multiple requests with the action, and then get the answer from the underlying action exactly the same way as a normal /run action, but in continuous mode. Okay, fine. This is interesting, but how can you use it? Of course, at this stage, you cannot use in OpenWhisk. And it's not clear if we may or may not be able to do that. But you can use the runtime in Kubernetes as is, not through OpenWhisk, but through Kubernetes. So this is an example. You can write a simple Kubernetes descriptor that is using the runtime, and you pass the environment variable OW WebSocket to enable the WebSocket, but also you can do an automatic initialization to another environment variable that is OW Autolnit, that is initializing the action directly from Kubernetes itself, reading an action that is stored in a config map. So what is this Autolnit? Well, you know, a runtime is normally initialized to the /in endpoint. But I added another feature that if you pass the environment variable OW Autolnit, the runtime will initialize the action using a local file in the container. This local file in the container will be provided by Kubernetes that will mount it in multiple ways. In this case, I mounted the action from a symbol descriptor. A config map is called in Kubernetes. But you can instead use an init job that can download the action code from GitHub, S3, whatever. It is not mandatory. The only thing is that just say where is the action, set the Autolnit variable, and the action will be automatically initialized. Once you have this action in Kubernetes, you can expose with an ingress. So here you can see a simple example. Here I did an example. Basically, this is a static HTML page using a WebSocket. and the action is exposed to an ingress, and then you can use as a client. This is the code. This is simple JavaScript code that is using the action. So I'm not going to explain this code because it's pretty obvious, but it's using a WebSocket. Maybe I complete just showing a bit, because I have here, I prepared a micro demo. So this one is the example. Here, this one, this is invoking the action through an HTML. And here you can see I open a WebSocket tweet, and then, well, empty or okay. This is the standard hello action used by this, but now it's accessible to WebSocket. That's it. Questions?
I have one. Michel, first of all, this is amazing. It's so nice that you thought of putting WebSockets into the actions. So while OpenWhisk still doesn't support this, I'm curious if you spent any time thinking how would this work from the lifecycle of an action in OpenWhisk, because given the persistent connection to WebSocket, like how will we know if we can dispose the action and maybe recreate it? Did you have any thoughts around this?
Yeah, okay, yes, I thought a bit about that. I don't think it's possible to plug this thing as is in the current model, because we have a front end. The front end will dispatch to the invoker and so on. But I think it could be possible. But it's my idea, just my personal idea. It could be possible extend the API server, the controller, I mean, and then ask to Kubernetes itself to launch an action as WebSocket server instead of using. Of course, this will work when you deploy OpenWhisk Kubernetes. But if we do that, because understanding that is we're moving towards Kubernetes, we can also add this feature and maybe have to the command line an option / WebSocket, and then in this case with a concurrency number that we decide. And this way, in this case, instead of be launched to the normal way, it will be launched in Kubernetes as a separate server, and then can be mapped. So the code that I wrote for deploying Kubernetes can be the controller to talk to Kubernetes and ask to deploy a new image with those features and expose as an ingress. So from the point of view of the user, it will be completely independent. Sorry, it will be completely transparent. It's just a new options. But the implementation should be done, in my opinion, by Kubernetes. Or something else, like I don't know, it's possible to do in Docker without Kubernetes. Nor I don't know if it's interesting to do that. But if we use Kubernetes, I think it's possible to do. Of course, we have to decide if it makes sense, if we want to do that, and many other things. So far, just a proposal. I'm just putting my 2 cents on the table, and everyone will tell you if it's worth to push or not. Okay.
Well, Michel, I have a question on, well, maybe related to that I saw that you skip the /init and made it automatically by having the container have the source code, the main.go when it boots up. But did you left the other stuff intact where the /init still works, can accept a zip file, an executable, a source file? And then instead of /run, we run /ws, like WebSocket connection.
It's entirely as before.
Okay.
I only added the 2 environment variables, that will make easier to deploy an action container. So, but I reused everything. For the WebSocket, I reused the /run. And for the Autolnit, I used the /init. But the code is exactly the same. I did the whole thing in a day because it's pretty simple. I just reused the existing things to fit in Kubernetes.
Cool. So I like that part, because then the Autolnit was a kind of a bonus for like booting up in a Kubernetes that you don't need /init, just ready to go.
Yes.
So, but what Dragos was asking, I was thinking that, and Marcus made a point that when we want to have high concurrency, multiple invocations in flight from the invoker to this container, I think it's possible to have the invoker have a single connection, WebSocket connection to the user container, and then have a message contract where an invocation can be sent as a message, and the message will have the activation ID, will have all the metadata, and once that activation is done, maybe it takes longer, maybe it takes faster, it comes back with a message response with the same ticket, right, activation ID, so the invoker knows what this response is about. That makes sense, or maybe that's where I miss.
I don't know the details internal of the controller invoker to say if yes or no. I leave it to the rest of the team to do that. I just did the runtime implementation side. No, I'm not able to go and decide how to blend the rest. But,
okay. Good.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is changing the HTTP client from the invoker to the container to be a WebSocket client.
Yep.
And I agree that is possible. I've poked at that a little bit. I think there's some the messaging semantics that have to be added there to make it behave in an HTTP-like case. We'll have to change that contract a bit. One of the things I've been looking at is the performance of the HTTP client. So even though we can pack more activations at the invoker layer, now I see problems where we get too many concurrent requests coming from the HTTP client. That becomes a bottleneck that gets queued up at the invoker, and that causes other problems. And so I think WebSockets is potentially one interesting place to look at for there.
It could be
what about that?
HTTP, DPRC, or WebSocket, right? 3 alternatives to what we have today.
Yeah.
I can interrupt something. No more. Sorry.
Kubernetes has auto-scaling features. So if we mandate to Kubernetes, then there are other Kubernetes can scale the requests as they happen, and then can be automatically extended and mapped to the ingress, because I think most of this work, because it's already provided by Kubernetes, I don't see the reason because we have to redo that in OpenWhisk, I think. Anyway, again, this is a decision that will not belong to me.
Yeah, so I think that we've seen enough. I think that moving to the next topic, we can take this to the dev list and keep talking about it. Carlos, I think if you want to share your thoughts, and Tyson, it sounds like you've thought about different protocols and enabling these things. So if you could share that, that'd be great.
Yeah, it would be good to hear from you, Tyson, on your findings.
Yeah, and for full disclosure, after Michelle reached out to me with this topic, he Slacked me and made sure it was on the agenda, and he and I talked about, and as you know, Carlos, we're delving into Knative, so I think that in a couple weeks we'll have something to show on Knative, which will add to the conversation as well. I think that in general, making the runtimes available to other protocols and running on Kubernetes and compatible Knative, and being aware of what environment they're running in and things like that. The init stuff was interesting. How we do that, how we turn off the service endpoints, init and run. All those things I think we're converging towards the same thing. Just different approaches.
Within this /init.
Yeah. All right. Next topic is Cosmin. Cosmin, do you want to share?
Sure. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so hi everybody, I'm Cosmin. I'm new to the runtime team. I work for Adobe and I'm in the same team with Tyson and Dragos and Chetan, people that I see here. So I'm gonna talk a little bit today about a project that we've been working on. It was just a few days to development, but also like putting it now in clusters, so it took a little bit longer. But it deals with how we can make the user metrics available for our OpenWhisk cluster. And this is related to a pull request that has been done a while ago that exposes these user metrics into Kafka. And what we have built like one component that connects to Kafka and reads those messages and then stores them in Prometheus, which is a data source for Grafana in order to visualize those metrics. So as you know, in this in the documentation and the OpenWhisk, we have two types of messages that are being sent, and they can be activated by adding this environment variable to the invoker, which by default it should be false. It should be true. And it will send metrics related to how long the execution of an invocation took place, the wait time, the init time, status code also, and kinds and memory are important elements that you can visualize after that into the dashboard. There's also another payload that is being sent from the controller, but this is something that we have not added into our project for the moment. It's in development, so we can add it too. So this is the pull request that has been added to OpenWhisk, and by activating it, those messages are going to be sent to Kafka. Now, our project was written in Scala. Mostly, the connector was developed by Chetan with Akka streams, and it connects to Kafka. It grabs those messages and then exposes them for Prometheus to scrape them. In the project, we use Kmon and the Prometheus client. The advantage of the Prometheus client is that it provides some ways of zipping the payload, and it's faster in terms of providing a lot of metrics sometimes if a lot of invocation are happening at the same time. And we have documented here how you can actually start a project with all the components. And at the moment, this project is connected to the Docker Compose, which can be found in the developer tools. So what we need to have first is the Docker Compose environment that will spin up all the OpenWhisk components, and then we're gonna do a make start Docker Compose for the other three components, which are gonna be the user event service, the Prometheus, and the Grafana. What happens here in the start Docker Compose, we're just spinning up these containers inside of the same network that has already been created by the other Docker Compose that are related to the OpenWhisk. And inside, there is a configuration that we do that points to the Kafka endpoint. And once that has been done, it's ready to go. So the only thing that I will have to do there would be to just start these Docker Compose that spin ups the user events, the Prometheus, and the Grafana. I have here a few dashboards. So the idea was to now I've started it, so it will take a little bit to reload. But we have designed this dashboard somehow related to another dashboard that we found that is the one for the IP functions. And what we display at the moment are things like, activation success rate, the duration time, initialization time, and we can see.
Still showing your Eclipse. Do you want to switch to a different dashboard or something?
Is showing, sorry, what?
Sorry, it's showing your Eclipse, not the dashboards. Were you expecting to be showing something else?
Oh yes, I'm showing right now the dashboard.
Yeah, we're not seeing it.
Yeah, we're seeing Eclipse.
I was wondering the same thing.
I think you're sharing Eclipse, not your screen or something like that.
Okay, let me just stop and share again. Okay. Okay, where's the desktop dashboard? Okay. Yes. So yeah. So as you can see here in the dashboard, we have like a similar dashboard that it was designed also for the IBM functions, and we have all these metrics that are being generated by OpenWhisk, such as total number of invocations, the rate of success, duration that it took for those actions to execute, initialization time, and so on. And yeah, so these are, at the moment, we're using them inside of our environment, and we had really good visibility now into what namespaces are running and what's happening for every single namespace. And you have the option, of selecting between namespaces and different actions that you have available. So yeah, this is kind of the small project that we've developed. We have inside of the project everything that is required, as I mentioned, to run this. Prometheus and Grafana, as there is also this default dashboard that is being also deployed inside of the project, and it will display the numbers once the Docker Compose is being started. So the project at the moment is in one of our public repos. It's in the Adobe platform OpenWhisk user events. But yeah, I just wanted to ask you guys what would be, maybe if this is of interest, what would be the best place to just...
I have to say that my team's wanted a dashboard some time. I mean, it seems like it's the big glaring missing hole in our project. I mean, you talked about implementing this or showcasing this in dev tools for Docker Compose. I mean, is it worthwhile making this a generalized repo project and making it available? So, I mean, I like to mainstream it so it's available not just under dev tools, but mainstream it so it's available and to be able to use in Kubernetes especially.
Yes. So yeah, that's a very good point. So at the moment, this is part of, together with the dev tools and the Docker Compose version of things. But yeah, like the next step would be to just have a Helm chart that will deploy all these components inside of the Kubernetes cluster, same way the OpenWhisk is. So that's just a trivial update that we can add to the project. So yeah,
I mean, would it be helpful, I mean, to create a repo for you all and just move that stuff into that repo and then?
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Why a new repo and not just have it in core, just a container that is user?
That's fine with me too.
User metrics to Prometheus. The image gets created there, and then it can be deployed in Compose. It can be deployed.
As long as, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's six of one, half a dozen other. As long as a Docker container can be created.
Yeah.
So I mean, we've been trying to declutter core, and if it's anyways.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're open to.
I think that the topic. PRs and cores are stuck. It's used to move PRs and other repos, it seems.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. A new repo can also be useful. So it doesn't matter. But yeah, this is good. Now, this is something that we did internally in IBM I think we did it for Stats D and then the Grafana. But it will be good if it can grow into picking up the other metrics you mentioned. We do in the controller, like rate limiting and concurrency.
Yes.
And also system-wide. There's also system-wide metrics that is not for the user, but like you as a provider or vendor, you want to see like are a million Node.js invocations happening right now versus 200,000 Python ones, right? Like a system-wide collection also will be good to think about. Right?
Yeah. There's another pull request that Chetan has done in the last days. We've been talking about also related to GMX for the invoker and controller. So we could also maybe use Grafana for this type of metrics that just grab some data on how the applications are running in the cluster. And from a DevOps perspective, that would be usable. Like
you're talking about the system metrics command, the PR that Chetan did?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah, so now that, and we've noticed in our use cases, now that Prometheus is part of the cluster, we can use it as a persistence store for, various other numbers that we want to display. And yeah, we could also connect it to display numbers, that are part of the, these applications and how they run internally. But yeah, this implementation is for user events, but the Prometheus as a service could be maybe connected to some other components in OpenWhisk too.
Yeah, Prometheus is widely adopted. It's like factory standard, Kubernetes and non-Kubernetes everywhere.
Yep. Any other questions or?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up and the work.
Yeah, again, I want to be more aggressive with things like this, features like this. So, I want to give it flexibility. So I would suggest in your repo, I'm open to other suggestions. But if you, it's all about your comfort level, Cosman, about, getting this out there. So if you need help with, Carlos or I, or anybody can help you with the mechanics of it all.
Sure. That would be great to know where to put this project or where to to migrate it or so. So once we have this done, then we can maybe discuss on, the components that we have to move. Then also this PR that we need to do related to Kubernetes. But yeah, let's have another project or directory inside of the OpenWhisk.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Let's take it to the dev list and figure out where the right place to put it is. I think some of that depends on how closely coordinated it has to be with the core repo. Like if you have to make coordinated changes, it probably belongs in the core repo. If it's more standalone, then it's easier to do as a separate repo.
Yeah, I think it's a standalone at the moment. The only thing that needs to be done is to have this environment variable activated for the invoker. But other than that, this is actually pretty separated from all the other components.
All right, cool.
All right, thanks, Cosman.
Sure.
Just wanted to note that there are other dev list topics that have been appearing. Ning Yang from Neighbor Corp has posted a couple of different topics. Want to call attention to people. One about add protect feature to avoid update or delete actions by mistake. Operation Invoker, side change, pre-warm container. So people, you just want to call that to your attention if you want to read those and respond and get some dialogue going. Dave, I don't know if you want to talk about, you propose, remember we were scheduling, there was some comments back and forth in there. I know Marcus channeled back to some stuff he had months ago, some discussions in that topic. I don't know where that's going, but I guess that'll segue into your efforts to create a unified release, Dave. What are the plans with that, and what's the outlook?
I think so for a unified release, should probably raise this again in the dev list. The main thing to get done is deciding that the components are actually ready and then putting it together. We have to have release notes with this release. We should have release notes. That's a huge bit of tedium that someone's got to bite off. Ideally, we're talking about releasing I think 12 or 14 projects, all of which have to have release notes. So that has to get dealt with by the people who know the individual projects and what's changed in them. The voting stuff is not, voting and packaging is not that bad. It's mainly deciding that we're actually ready and writing those detailed release notes and moving forward with that.
So how do you want to proceed? Do you want to just set some dates and get people to sign up? And how do you want to proceed?
I mean, probably the way to proceed is just I can send another mail to the dead list. But basically, we need to decide that we're ready, and then I'm willing to do some of the work, but there's no way I'm writing release notes for 14 projects. So people have to step up and do the work.
Yeah, I mean,
I can help with the runtimes, and I think I don't know what your, yeah, we can discuss the details about this release note, but I know I have a change.log mark file for the runtimes.
I mean,
it just tells you what's the delta from the last release.
Yeah, I'm one to help, as well as Pretty and I. Perhaps I can speak for Pretty, but I know Vincent's out for at least 30 to 45 days and unreachable for the most part. But we can help. You know, I think that this ties in with the other topic that I was going to talk about next, which is graduation. So I really want to make a push for graduation. I want to see if we can, to have things ready by the Apache February board meeting. See where we're at. Hopefully we can hit it. For our part, I'm working aggressively to do the last legal thing, which is actually transfer all the worldwide trademarks and logos to ASF. So I started with, I found the correct attorney in IBM, and we're starting that process. I have a checkpoint with her tomorrow, and we'll have checkpoints, and we're marching towards getting all those legal documents signed by February. So if we could align, if we pick dates for this release that would get us done with the release before that board meeting, that would put us in good standing. So if we wanted to go for it, that we'd have all of our check marks done. That would be great. We can, if we pick a date and work towards it and have people put their names on it, and we have to move the date because we're not done. That's cool. But I think the dates always help, a landmark or something to reach towards.
Right. Yeah, I think it's probably at least a 3-week process. So if you sort of look at what we have to do, like the runtimes and the CLI could all get done in one wave. Then we have to take those tagged versions and do a release of the core system that picks up all of those released versions.
Yep.
And then we have to do a release of the deploy kube and Mesos and the other whatever else we're doing in terms of packaging on top of it. And each of those things takes a week because we have our 72-hour vote followed by a 72-hour incubator vote. So we have at least a 3-week stage to get from nothing to a release.
So 3 groupings. So 3 days: runtimes, tooling, core, and then deployments.
Yeah, I think just because voting is such a pain, but I don't see any way to do it in less than 3 waves. Just because of the way the components stack up on top of each other.
I say post the dev list and pick a date, and let's work towards the first wave, and I'll help with the tooling side. Carlos can help with the runtimes and put the release notes together for the most part. Help you out there.
Okay.
Cool. That's all I really had. Do we have any topics to talk about? And I didn't have a chance to go to the PRs and core. Anything to note there? I just know there's a backlog, and somebody mentioned that to me, yesterday. I can't remember who it was. But a lot of us here are not ready to do big PR reviews and merges into core. I think, Carlos, Tyson, maybe Dave, and others, the burden's on a fewer number of people, but if we could get some of the key ones moving. I'm especially interested in ones with new PRs from people like NeighborCorp ones, and is that if we can get more, get some attention and get some responses back to the people from other companies to show them that we're listening and get their participation, encourage that the community is listening to them and get them involved. That'd be great. I appreciate it. Just even a response, just encourage them. I don't know what to do in terms of drumming up numbers. I'm going to talk to Roderick to see if he can help as well. I don't know if anybody else has their friends, neighbors, colleagues, in ICF or whatever that they can, get to help. That'd be great. Any other topics? Kube, Mesos, API Gateway, anything going on tooling? I don't know if Pretty covered it, if it was ready at that point, but if you didn't notice that Whisk deploy is now, you can actually use it under the CLI. So it can be built in the CLI through an import. which is great. So we'll have a unified CLI. Hopefully, Whisk deploy will still remain a standalone, but you can also use it from CLI. So that's good news. Anything from anybody at large? If not, we can look to adjourn and pick a volunteer for next call. All right. Anybody available in 2 weeks' time? What's the calendar date? I don't have a calendar. So we have a calendar. Anybody want to volunteer to be a moderator? Michelle, you want to be a moderator? Tyson, anybody's available?
I am not available that week. I'm sorry.
Michelle? Rob, you want to go again? Cosmin, you're welcome to do it.
I can do it.
Cosmin, you want to do it? Okay, I heard he said he could do it. Okay. All right, so, if you need help, reach out to me in Slack. The standing meeting agenda is in the calendar entry, and you just gotta I would suggest just doing what on Monday, start drumming up topics and just remind people up until the time of the meeting, to join and submit topics. That's about it, and I'll help with the recording of that.
That's the week of Tech Summit, just to keep in mind.
Oh, then I cannot do it. Sorry.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry.
Anybody else?
Fortunately, I'm traveling to the USA that day.
Bummer.
Okay, so I cannot.
I can probably do it.
Justin's going to save the day. Thanks, Justin.
I was just checking my calendar.
Cool. All right. Yeah, with that, I think we're set. Everyone have a great 2 weeks until we meet again.
See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.